Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another chapter of Experiencer Interviews. And today we've got another amazing guest coming to us from the US. We have Steve Neill on board today. Steve Neill is an artist, visual effects creator, and filmmaker with over 40 years of experience in the film and television industry. In 1971, he interned at the American Zoetrope in San Francisco with Francis Ford Coppola and received much of his filmmaking education there. He moved to Hollywood to pursue his career in 1974. He has since worked on the movies such as Star Trek the Motion Picture, Ghostbusters, Fright Night, and more. He has appeared as a creature suit actor in many films, commercials, and TV shows. He has also done many of the CGI effects for the History Channel and the UFO Files. He has even made art for the X-Files. Steve is also an experiencer and the author of the book titled But Something Is There, An Unusual Journey. This book is Steve's journey through a lifetime of dealing with the unknown. Some call the experience the visitors, some call it abduction by aliens. The truth is, we don't know what it is, but something is there. So, Steve, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome, Jan. Thank you for having me.
Now, you've had this really amazing life, amazing career, and you're an experiencer on top of that. So, looking forward to nitpick your brain with all of those. I'm a huge fan of Star Trek, and my favorite, like all time, like more horror movie, monster movie is Fright Night. So
Oh,
I've got fond memories on that as well. So let's talk about your childhood experiences. Did anything out of the ordinary happen to you at that time?
sure. Well, my first very conscious memory, which it's funny, I didn't think much about it, but I never forgot it, was about 1958, and I was laying in bed. I remember it being 3 in the morning for some reason. In my film, there's a clock next to my bed, and I think there was a clock next to my bed. And I live on 47th Avenue in San Francisco, which is right near the beach. Playland used to be there. Although it would have been shut down at that time in the morning, San Francisco was not a quiet place, particularly. And even at 3 in the morning, there would be a lot of sound. I woke up to no sound. And when I say no sound, I mean it was so quiet. I felt I had to gasp because I wondered if I could even breathe. It was suffocating, the lack of sound. Um, and I looked around the room and I saw these little beams of light coming through my window. And they were searching around the room. And this drew my curiosity. And I wasn't really scared, not right then and there, but I crawled out of bed. My plan was to stay against the wall. So I would be in the shadow and whatever was shining the light couldn't see me. And I snuck up to the window and then peeked over the edge. And that's when I just saw bright lights. And they in the movie I show a very dark shape there, which later on in life, including my mother, we saw it a lot, the big dark circle. But I didn't really see it, but I did. The lights saw me, and they moved very quickly, like, oh, there he is, and that did scare me a bit. So I ducked back down, and I knew something was coming. I mean, I just don't know how, but I did. Probably because it had happened before, but this was one I was fully conscious for. So I scurried very quickly along the floor like a little snake and went and hid under my desk. And then the lights came in the room, but then the lights came around and then the light shined on me. And then I was pretty scared because I didn't know what was going on there. And all I saw was this form, and it was spindly, and, it had a large head, and it moved very close to me because it found me under the desk. And um, I blacked out. Next morning, I woke up. I was sleeping on the carpet in front of my parents' bed. Um, because previously I had been scared and going into the bedroom and getting in the bed with them, and they didn't want me doing that. And, they kept telling me, you need to go back to your bedroom and all this. And I didn't want to, 'cause I was scared. So I would sneak in there, and I woke up and then snuck back into my bedroom. Um, so that was something I never forgot. Years and years went by and other things happened, but that one really stuck out in my mind. But I never connected it with the UFOs that I was always seeing as a child and as a teenager and so on. I just didn't make that connection.
My life at this point had been average for a boy growing up in the 50s. My parents both worked and I went to school. I was an only child with no brothers or sisters. I had a large bedroom to myself that looked towards playland and the ocean. My interests were different than most kids my age. I had my eyes on the stars. I loved astronomy, art, science, and music. I still joke today that my first football was a telescope. I always wondered when I looked up at the night sky what was out there. This night, I would find out. The next thing I knew, it was morning. I felt panicked, remembering what had happened, but beyond the point of that creature's face, I couldn't remember anything else. Not even how I got on the rug. Could remember that I was so scared that night that sometimes I would sneak in to sleep on the bed with my parents. I was afraid of the lightning people. At least that's what I remember my mother telling me. That's what I called them. She told me I was just having nightmares, that big boys didn't sleep with their parents. So when I was so scared, I would sneak in and sleep on the rug. I know today what was happening to me then. But when I was so young, this was all new. It was hard to know what was real. Who were these beings? My heart told me it was real.
Now, did they say anything to you when they came into your bedroom?
We're not going to hurt you. They didn't want me to be afraid. That was it.
That was it. Still.
Yeah.
Now, did you grow up like having this sort of fear of the dark, fear of the closet under the
No, I was attracted to it because I was fascinated by the unknown. So, there was an exhilaration. I guess you could call it a sort of fear, but I felt a kinship to whatever it was that was in the dark for me. So I don't know how to put it into terms better than that. So I would spend a lot of time out in the backyard just staring at the stars. Eventually, my parents got me a telescope. I spent all my time with that at night. And so I wasn't really afraid. I was cautious. I was, oh, if I felt fear, I would kind of walk forward into it. And I've always been that way all my life. Is I tend to want to face my fears, and then I find it almost intoxicating because once you get past that fear, there's something incredible and expansive on the other side of it.
Now, did you ever wake up outside?
Yes, I have. Yes, and one time I was standing on the balcony outside the porch of my house in Pacifica, California. When I came to, I was in a pair of underpants and a t-shirt, and I was looking at a UFO that was sort of hat-shaped, saucer-shaped, up by the Nike base, which was just above our house on the hill there. One of the episodes that I did in our series, Breaking the Silence, covers that whole incident. And I replicated exactly how it appeared to me when I saw it. Now, the weird thing about it is that I had a friend spending the night over, and he was sleeping on the floor in my room, and I went to get him because we used to go out on his roof and sit with binoculars and look for UFOs all the time. And we were both very interested in him. And I tried to get him outside. I did, but I practically had to drag him. He was like drugged or something. And they got him out there, and he looked at it and went, "Oh, yeah, look at that." And then next thing I knew, he was gone. And then I went back in. And then my mom woke up and started kind of yelling at me, "What are you doing up? It's 3 a.m. and I got to get up and go to work tomorrow." And I said, "There was a UFO outside, Mom." He says, "There's no UFOs. Just go to bed." Of course, the next morning, I'm sitting there at the breakfast table, and she came in with the local newspaper and threw the paper down and said, "Well, that UFO you said you saw last night, it's in the newspaper." So other people had seen it too, and it was up by the Nike base. And I used to play up there all the time. You couldn't get into the Nike base, couldn't fit past the fences, but there was old military installations there that were chained up from World War II, and it was an underground bunker, and it went down really deep. And we used to get inside and go in there. I mean, the adventurous part of me would get past my fear to go into dark tunnels and things. It's just because I wanted to know what was there.
You talked about seeing lights as a kid. Now, you did share a story about your mom, I believe your mother and your grandmother also seeing a
Yeah.
UFO. Would that be that same incident be related?
Yes. Well, that was the episode, My Mother's Secret. And I'll never forget, we didn't talk. We really didn't get along. We never did. And, especially after my dad died when I was 14, he got killed in a car accident. It was a stupid one at that. It wasn't his fault. He was hit by a drunk driver, but then we never got along. And so we didn't talk much. After I came to Hollywood, she really didn't, she was against me coming here. She wanted me to get married and have grandchildren. And instead I pursued what she thought was a ridiculous career I could never succeed at in Hollywood. And I did, but she never believed that I did. So 18 years later, we start talking again. And first thing she told me was, I saw that movie you said you worked on. I said, "What movie?" She said, "Ghostbusters." And I said, "Oh." That was her way of telling me now she believes me, And then she said, "But I seen you on television a bunch with that Whitley Strieber, that author." And I went, "Oh boy, here we go." Because, she was highly intelligent. The whole family was very intelligent. Lots of artists and scientists and people that worked on projects like the A-bomb and everything else. And so I figured I was going to get that Neil Tyson sort of attitude. And I got exactly the reverse. When I said, "Oh, okay, Mom, well, you know what?" She says, "No, no, no, no. It's not what you think." I said, "What do you mean?" "I believe you." And so this was like, really got my attention. "You believe me?" He said, "Yes." Then she started telling me things she's experienced, but that one that she described sitting on the porch with my grandmother, because towards the end of my grandmother's life, she moved in with my mom, and they saw this black shape going across in front of the stars. She said it was round. She could tell it was round, but the only reason you could see it is because where she lived was out in the country. So there was a Milky Way, and you could see it very clearly outlined by the stars. And as it got closer, lights started to appear from the center of it, and then they started actually those lights be turned on them sitting in the porch, and they kept coming closer. So she backed into the house with my grandmother, and the lights continued to follow. I guess it got really close, and it was outside, and they're shining them into the windows, just like what happened to me. And I said, "So what happened next?" And there was this big silence. I said, "Mom." She goes, "I don't remember." And then that's when she said, "Maybe I should go and have hypnosis." So I don't think that was the only incident. We didn't get to talk much more after that because she didn't live that much longer. But that was her way of telling me that basically this stuff had been going on in the family, and she was probably hoping it wouldn't affect me, but it did. And I never talked to her about it a couple of times, and she got mad. But on my father's side, my grandfather over there, he had nothing but paranormal experiences all through his childhood and his life. In fact, I saw a ghost with him when I was out walking with him. I must have been 8, 9 years old. That's in the movie too. Well, actually, the ghost isn't in it, but the big orange ball that hovered over us, that was in there. My grandmother was a complete skeptic, and she used to make fun of him, antagonize him, and I remember him saying, "Oh, he believes in all these things. He believes in leprechauns and the banshee." And he says, "I never said leprechauns. I said I saw little people." And as you know, and I know, there's a difference between little people and leprechauns, or is there? Because as the great Jacques Vallée has talked about, back in those days, people would have called them leprechauns because they didn't have anything else to compare them to, and they didn't have that consciousness of going into space. So they were very phase. So there was lots of that on his side, and he did talk to me about it. That is in the movie, where he talks about the being he saw in the corner of the churchyard. So it was clear.
Yeah, well, on my side of the family, we had a lot of ghost stuff, a lot of ghost stories within the family. My uncles had stuff. I've got really amazing stories to share, but I never had any I couldn't, we had no ET stuff within the family. So the closest we thought we had to anything like ET related was our love for Star Trek.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've got a United Federation of Planets tattoo on my shoulder. So that's how,
Oh,
yeah. I don't love the newer Trek, but
I have Mr. Spock's ears on my wall in here.
yeah,
the ones I actually made for him for the first movie. So
imagine
plus
that.
the Enterprise, there's a big model of the Enterprise behind me I built.
Yeah,
It's 6 feet long, and the captain's chair. And so I know what you mean.
that's beautiful. Um, Now coming back to your story as a kid, did they come to you a lot?
I'm going to use the word I think they did, because I do have lots of memories. I mean, I remember going with my dad up to Chico, and we met one of his racing buddies there. And I can't remember his name, but I can still see him. He was this really neat guy, and he had this beautiful race car because my dad raced, and I was around racing cars all my life. And his friend's son was there, and I spent the night in his room. And that was the night that this big orange ball appeared in the window, and there was like this lightning sort of energy coming off of it. And I remember his little boy being terrified, and I was going towards it, and that's the last thing I remember. But there's lots of incidences like that. Through high school, there was stuff. But when it really started up a lot again is when I came down here, and probably around 77, right in there, 78, just after Close Encounters came out, which is perfect for the skeptics, oh well, you saw that movie, and of course that's why you were seeing UFOs flying over neighborhoods, and all your neighbors were seeing it too, because you were projecting that from seeing the movie. So so there was a lot of stuff going on back then. I had friends all around me seeing them with me. I had friends saying there was something over your house and it was hovering, and they're banging on the door to come in, and I go out and they'd be gone, but that there were, I mean, one night I was in my apartment in Toluca Lake, and this is when I'm working in the film business quite heavily at that point. I was involved with my own motion picture. It was a feature film called The Day Time Ended, horrible title. And I had a friend over, and he brought two girls over for us to go out on a date with. And I was in the bedroom of my apartment. This is in Toluca Lake, which is, right in the valley, right near Universal Studios. And I hear this voice say, "Go to the window, you'll see something really amazing." I thought, that's odd. Okay, I'll go to the window. So I go to the window and I see this UFO outside the window. And it wasn't anything really spectacular. It was just a very bright light. It was hovering, but it was moving kind of oddly. And I said, okay. So I went out of the bedroom and I went and I got the two girls. And I got my friend Ricky. I took them to the kitchen, which had a really good view of the sky. And I said, watch this. I want to go outside and hear if it's making any noise. It might be a helicopter hovering or something like that. But there were no nav lights, no anti-collision lights, and the light configuration was not like any airplane. And I've always been an aviation buff, so I know my aircraft. So they watched it, and they were little nervous because it was moving oddly. And I went outside, and by the time I got outside, it was gone. So I go back up there. And I said, "What happened?" And they were all three of them, they were white as a ghost. And they told me what happened, about how it got really bright and it broke into two pieces, turned red, and shot up into the sky and disappeared. And they'd never seen anything like that in their life, and they weren't even really that familiar with it. They knew about close encounters, but beyond that, they'd never seen anything. But they were with me, so they got to see something. And so the entire night was kind of ruined because the girls were afraid, and just the whole evening was so strange. And it was about 2 a.m, and they came back to the apartment. Ricky and the girls went home, and I'm just standing at the kitchen window, and I'm looking out that window again. And yawn, all of a sudden, the sky lit up like daylight. It was the most brightest arc welder blue-white light I'd ever seen. It lit up the whole kitchen. It was completely silent. And after it finished, it kind of faded down. The courtyard had all neon lights in it. They all started to flicker. The neon lights in the kitchen over the kitchen, they started to come on and flicker. And they glowed for a while, and then they faded out because they were all off. So that was a huge static electricity discharge, whatever that was. I never found out what it was, but I feel strongly it was related to what we saw that night. And then it just kept going from there. Another friend came over my place. He was at a restaurant. All the lights started going off and on. All the car alarms went off in the parking lot. So everybody went out there, and there was a UFO there. This was all in a few blocks from my house. These two girls I knew, I used to date, they came over banging on the door because they followed a dark circle UFO just after around dusk through a neighborhood just adjacent to me. And they were getting out of their car trying to get people to look at it, and they wouldn't look at it. Or they look at it and say, "Oh," and they said they were in some weird state. They couldn't get them. And so they followed it till it got to my apartment, and then it disappeared. And they were frantic. And, we were supposed to go out and have a good time and party hardy and all that. And all they wanted to do was stay up and talk about what they saw. So this kind of thing followed me around a great deal in the 70s. So after I got out of high school and went to Hollywood.
Now, did your love for the horror genre, or and the sci-fi, was your experiences like a contributing factor to why you went into that industry?
It may have been. I mean, my dad's favorite movie was God, I'm drawing a blank on it. The one with this guy in it. Robbie the Robot. I'm drawing it. A Forbidden Planet. Thank you. Thank you, brain. Hard drive's getting full. I'm 72 now. Yeah, that was his favorite film, and I don't know what he thought of Star Trek because he passed away in 1966. He may not have got to see it, but he probably would have liked it. And um, another one of his favorite films was There Stood Still. We watched Twilight Zone religiously.
Hmm.
Again, as frightening as Twilight Zone was, I couldn't stop watching it because I really felt that the subject matter it was covering, I had a kinship to, that I was somehow connected to it very strongly. So, um, yeah, I think that because I was involved and knew it from my first conscious memories or feelings of being a conscious entity myself, that I was attracted to those things because I was part of those things. So,
I
and
didn't.
yes, that's why I wanted to go into that field of work. So,
Amazing. Like growing up here in like northern Canada, we didn't know anything about ET, so like I had three channels, black and white TV, and the one thing we knew really when it came to like what a gray looked like was like the Roswell documentary. So we didn't know anything about ET. So um, growing up as a kid, I didn't really put that off as ET related because I thought it could, oh, it's probably spirit or because I had a huge fear of the dark, and I would tell my mom that there were people in my bedroom at night, and this happened for at least a good year and a half every night, and I was so afraid knowing that they were there. I'd sleep with my entire belly against the wall, and I slept like that up until the age of 11, roughly. I felt protected because I knew I didn't want to look behind me. Now, so okay, so you grew up in a family of experiencers, sort of like your
sort of,
gen.
yeah, I don't think they were all talking about it. So
Yeah.
I just don't.
Now, so since we talked about Star Trek, how did you get involved with Gene and the company?
Well, it's just I came to Hollywood. I met Rick Baker. I met some other makeup artists. Became friends with them. They started giving me little bits and pieces of work, and started sort of turning down stuff, saying, I go, guy can do it, which led to a lot of work. But somewhere along the line, I met Fred B. Phillips, and he is the makeup artist from The Outer Limits and from the original Star Trek series. Um, he was this really wonderful guy. Everybody loved Fred, and um, I got this job. I was working at Disney, and the head of the makeup department over there, Bob Schiffer, another very famous old makeup artist. Um, he got asked to do because he did the original Shaggy Dog, so he got asked to do a TV show that was like that. It was called Mr. McDuff, which was about a guy that turned into a shaggy dog, and it was a morning kids show. It was fun, but they wanted that makeup exactly. And so Bob said, I can't do it because I'm under contract to Disney. So he says, I'm going to give you this job. But he told me how he did the makeup. He told me what stuff he worked with and everything, and that helped me recreate it exactly. I had pictures of myself putting that makeup on, but I couldn't do it on the set because I wasn't union yet. And so I knew Fred. We'd become friends, and I had to pick someone I knew. I want to make sure they put the makeup on right. So I called Fred, and I got him the job doing that TV show for a while. He was much older by this point, so he was very grateful to get to work. So to make the long story really short, I'm working on my own movie, and I got funded and had some big stars in it: Dorothy Malone, Jim Davis. And it was my first film that I wrote and produced and I was doing the effects on. But I got this phone call one day from Fred Phillips: "Says you want to work on Star Trek?" And I thought he was joking, because Star Trek had been long gone. And he said, "No, we're making a movie. It's the first motion picture. Do you want to work on it?" And I went, "How am I going to do that if I'm doing this?" Yes. I didn't even think I did both, and I damn near killed myself. But I worked on that film. In fact, I made myself very sick, which is why I'm not in that big rec room scene in the film, where you see all the crew. Those are all people that worked on the show in there as extras, and I had my chance to be in uniform and be there, and I was too sick from working so hard on it, so that was a shame. But I got to know Gene Roddenberry though before that. I met him. I used to go to the Star Trek conventions, and because I had worked on the Planet Ape TV shows, they invite me as a guest, and I do makeup demonstrations, and I made Vulcan ears, and they used to sell them foam latex and put them on people and stuff. So Gene and his wife Majel came over and talked to me, and we got to be friends. So between Fred and between meeting Gene, and that was amazing. He was so approachable. He was just such a nice guy, the both of them. I got to know him. So when the movie happened, they asked if I wanted to work on it. I was one of many people working on it, but it was, the first job I got was to do Leonard Nimoy's ears. And he was always my favorite character in Star Trek. I was 16 years old. Mr. Spock is who I wanted to be, and here I am doing his ears. So that's the short story.
Well, that's fascinating.
Yeah. So I did worked on the pilot with Gene for the Next Generation, and then I worked on Star Trek 6.
Really.
The one with the Klingons. I did a lot of Klingons for that. So
I
I
love
was
them.
very, very proud to be able to do that.
Let's get back to your story with the ETs. I believe you eventually got abducted. Is that possible?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I had been since I was little. I mean,
But
even
do you recall being on a craft?
not until, well, I had a sense of it, and I couldn't separate it from dreams, to be honest, but I did. And it wasn't until much later on that after I read communion, and I sort of said, oh, geez. And then I met Yvonne Smith, and I was doing artwork for her, and I asked her if we could do some sessions, and she did. And the sessions that first one we did was the one I described in San Francisco as a little boy, and I couldn't get past blacking out. No matter what we did, I never got any further. I got a little better look at them, and I realized that the grays were something that I was seeing at that age. But we didn't get much further. It was the stuff that had happened more recently during the 80s and 90s, because during the 80s there were some doozies, and we went back and looked at that and got a better look at it. And then, of course, all through the 90s, it was happening every week, sometimes 3 days in a row, and I could remember most of it. And I came face to face with a gray in my kitchen, wide awake one evening. So yeah, and I mean, there were you probably saw the one that most people avoided watching, and that was transcript 551, which was a transcript of one of the hypnotic sessions that Yvonne did that was on tape, where I was taken and was in some sort of human or military medical facility with grays, and they were doing surgery on my skull, on my brain.
So what did they
And
do?
I remembered most of that, but the hypnosis brought out a little bit more. So I started remembering. I'd wake up and I'd have memory of what happened during the night. Nothing dreamlike about it at all. And I had physical marks all over me. And that particular time, I had a small, very fine hole that was drilled into my forehead, and I couldn't go to the doctor. And I had to kind of keep it from my wife at the time, and the only doctor I knew I could trust was Roger Lear, so I went and had him look at it, and he says, "Yeah, you got a hole in your head." And we had a good laugh, and but no, I really did, and I said, "What do we do?" Because I mean, I got a hole through my skin, through the skull, into my brain. This could be dangerous. And he said, "It's okay. It's a little bit of fluid coming out." He put a bandage on it and said, "Basically, you just have to let it heal." I said, "Yeah, I can't go to anybody for this, because the first thing they're going to say is, how did you get a hole in your head like this?" I mean, it was the thickness of a fine pin, but it was there. And so if I had to tell them, Well, you ever heard of alien abduction? I think I was abducted and they did brain surgery. They would have locked me up. They would have thought you did it to yourself somehow. This guy's crazy. He stuck a pin in his head and through his skull somehow. Because that's how they think. They think inside the box, not outside. So.
Wow. Do you remember the moments prior to that operation?
Yeah, I remember the house. I remember that there was something going on in the house. And then I couldn't move very well. And there were people standing over me, and it was the Greys. And they lifted me through the ceiling. I mean, it's just classic. And just we just went up like there was no force of gravity on us at all. I remember seeing the top of the roof. I remember the tree going by me as we went up. And, the ship, or whatever you want to call it, it was unlit. It was circular. There was a light coming from it, and like a little doorway kind of thing. Now, for all I know, that round circle is a hole, through space-time, but we think it's a saucer because it's got a shape to it. There's lights on it. Well, it could be that that's actually just a hole between this world and another. I don't know. It's just speculation on my point, but I have to consider all things because I don't really know when it comes down to it. I can only tell you what I remember.
I had a black hole appear to me in the bedroom. 5.5, maybe perhaps inches long, maybe like 3.5, 4 inches wide, black. During the night, I woke up in this sort of I thought it was a disc at first. It was like
Right.
maybe 2 feet away from my face in the bedroom doorway, exactly in the bedroom doorway. And long story short, my fiance at the time wakes up after I switch on the light, and she wakes up and a man was telling her EMP nonstop, electromagnetic pulse. So
Right.
she doesn't wake up because of me. She wakes up because of the man telling her the message. So we knew like both events were correlated, let's say. There was a reason why these events were happening. So we fall back asleep maybe like half an hour later, and I get the feeling there's movement coming in from the doorway where the portal was, the black hole. I black out again. This time I'm waking up and facing her, and I'm super drugged up, and I'm able to look around in the bedroom because there was enough light coming in from outside from the moon, and the light post and all that. And I'm seeing in front of the bed, on her side of the bed, like these 6 feet tall shadow beings, broad shouldered, really broad shouldered, and
Huh.
they had these huge helmets on their head. They
Wow.
were blacker than the night, but I could see through them. And my closets are about 6 feet tall, the closet doors, and I'm 6 feet tall. So I knew that. That's why I'm able to say 6 feet roughly. And so I'm still like super drugged up, not really afraid because I'm like all relaxed. And I'm able to raise a hand with some effort. And as soon as I do that to say hi, I black out. I wake up. God knows when after that. I feel I'm standing because I'm looking downwards towards my feet. I'm barefoot and I'm wearing hospital robes. And then I black out again and I wake up the next morning in my bed. Uh,
It's
yeah,
hard to know what to make of it. I mean, you got to realize there's some level of technology that's so sophisticated to us, but just nothing to them. Oh, I'll just make I'll make a hole from here to there, and we're gonna go visit Jan, and we got things to do with them, and
exactly.
that's just part of it. And we make so much out of it, but to them, it's just something they have to do, or they need to do, or there's a very good purpose behind it. And people always say, well, why would they pick on me? I mean, who am I? Well, who is anybody? We're a sentient
Yeah.
life form, and somehow they've been with us since we've been born. And it's for many people, it's not just the grays, it's different sentient beings as well, non-human forms. I've only experienced that I'm aware of the grays, and one time a reptilian. So
At what age did the reptile came to
that was
you?
that. Yeah, that was during the 90s. So I was my 40s, early 40s, and I was very brief. And I did a drawing of it that got around because it wasn't like the usual stuff you see. This big muscly guy with big jaw and all that stuff. It was very humanoid and very wrinkled and very old looking, and but it had scales and it very fine scales, and it was very evolved. had no clothes on, because I remember when I tried to get off the table to move, because it was kind of unnerving sitting next to this thing, and it put its leg or wrapped its leg around my leg, and my leg had no, I had no pants on, and I could feel its skin. And I heard it say to me, "Where do you think you're going? You're not going anywhere." It actually, that's what I heard. It was like, oh my God. And then I don't know what happened after that, but I remember that clearly, as if I just, like right now, but that was it. I never, I have seen humanoids during my adolescence and teenage years. This one woman I used to visit all the time. I would go to sleep at night, and I'd wake up in this white room with this very attractive, very odd but attractive looking humanoid woman. So
what happened?
I'm not sure, but I think we had some sort of intimate interaction, and I think that there was a purpose behind that, and that was to create something else. So,
Okay.
yeah,
So were you ever shown hybrid children?
yeah, I did a drawing of the one. I've seen the ones in the tanks, and I did several illustrations of that. But I've also was shown at one time this child that I knew who the mother was, because she was in her support group, and it had her likeness in the eyes and the color of the hair, which was red, and it had her blue eyes, and it was supposed to be my child. So, and when they showed it to me, it was already, I guess, around 5 years old, right around in there. So I did a drawing of it.
Is that the one that you in your in one of your movies where a Gray's holding it like a small child? Is that the one?
No, it's actually a gray is standing next to it, and it's got its head up against its head and its arm around it.
Okay.
It's a color. It's an illustration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, fascinating. So now let me see. So when did your late wife get you the book Communion? Because that really sort of changed your life.
Yeah, I'm sort of surprised she brought that home, but at the time, she knew I had an interest in UFOs, and she knew I had seen UFOs, and she was okay with that. But when she brought the book home and I read the book, I think it's something she regretted afterwards, because I realized I flashed on that night when I was a little boy and the lights coming in the room and all that. And if that's all I had, that was enough. I knew I was involved. That I wasn't just seeing lights in the sky and seeing UFOs all the time, and having friends with me who saw them. And I mean, there was astronomy parties I went on where the person I was with 2 weeks later had no memory of what happened, because we had a UFO come right down where we were, and all that. And so that all came together, connected all the dots. And what was it? Like 3 years later, Whitley called up one night out of nowhere. So,
How did he get a hold of your number?
well, he got a hold of my number from a friend of mine. I don't think I can share his name.
Oh,
I don't know how he feels about this stuff today, but he's an experiencer, but he also is involved in the comic book industry, and was a very, very good writer of comics, very big comics. And he had these experiences, which really influenced his writing. And I guess he contacted Whitley, and because Whitley, and both he and Whitley wanted an artist to do some covers for the comic books. It was called Beyond Communion. And so Whitley got my number that way, and he called me up one night. But I thought somebody was playing a joke on me, because he says, "Is this Steve Neill?" I said, "Yes, it is. This is Whitley Strieber." And I started laughing at him. I said, "Oh, come on, who is this?" He got all mad. I laughed because he can be real grumpy, but he's got a great sense of humor. So he doesn't remember that. He says, "You remember everything." I said, "Yeah, I have one of those memories."
So you did get involved with Whitley later on because of your talent with drawing.
Yeah, but we also just became friends. We really liked talking on the phone, and we'd talk for hours about this subject. And then, I went to some conferences with him, and sometimes we would go up in one car with Anne, and she'd be asleep in the back. And we spent a lot of time together, and we also um, did a few TV shows together where we appeared together. One of them was the what was that called? It was the Alien Interview, the Area 51 tape that was smuggled out, and others, and enough that caught my mother's interest, and a lot of other people, both bad and good, you know. But we just became friends, and to this day we talk whenever we can, and we text each other back and forth, and we share information, and whenever he needs help, I help him. And whenever, like when my wife was dying, he was right there for me the whole time. Um, he's been very, very, very good friend all these years. So I've done a couple of his book covers. The one most recently is the Afterlife Revolution. So it's one of my book covers. So and I've done other art for him, and I've helped him with some of his videos, and I've analyzed footage for him, and so we've worked together. So, but basically we're just friends, and we just enjoy each other's company. So, which is nice. So,
Are you
we
aware
like,
if you've ever had implants in you
yes.
taken out? Yeah.
Yeah, the one I'm really sure that's an implant and not some kind of cyst or something is the one that's in my ear. So, and most recently, I was told point blank by the same whitish female, very feminine gray, that's been with me evidently all the way back to the beginning. She told me that was a part of her. It was a piece of her, which will probably, when it gets out, will have people kicking my door down wanting to dissect me, but evidently that's what it is.
So is
Because
that
it's
her?
not metal. It's not metal.
But is that her way to communicate with you, or like a link?
That would be a guess, but I would think probably it is. I mean,
So I've
and
got this thing just above
It
my
moves.
kneecap, my left kneecap, and I went to a conference and we did this sort of a scan with a like a stud detector,
Right.
and it wasn't metal, but I've had that since as long as I can remember. Like imagine when you're like 3 years old, no body hair whatsoever, small like baby skin everywhere, and you've got this big thing that doesn't look like a brown spot. And to me,
Right.
I thought it was a rock underneath the skin, which is crazy because if it were a rock, the body would reject it and try to push it out.
That's true. But
So
not if it's surrounded with your own human nerves tissue, with your
exactly.
cellular tissue. And when Roger Lear was removing the implants from people, and I was there with Whitley watching this happen many times, one of the things that Roger found was that there were human nerve cells growing out of the metal, the meteoric metal. And so this would tend to keep the body from rejecting it if it recognized its own tissue. Very smart. But whatever this is, I don't think it's metal. If it is, it's surrounded by some kind of biological tissue. But she claims it's hers, her tissue. It's part of her.
If you put pressure on it, do you feel something?
Oh yeah, and it hurts when I talk about it, and it hurts when I'm around other people that have these experiences, and it gets very hot, and it does move because when Whitley tried to feel it, it moved and it wasn't there, and then when we were driving back home, it was back again. I could feel it, and it was back again. So it was, they have a sense of humor too, I think. But yeah, that's there, and I have other ones in my body that may be, but I'm not really sure about them. I mean, Roger x-rayed my arm where one of them was or is still, and the most interesting part about that x-ray was that it showed that my arm had been sawed through at a 45-degree angle perfectly, just at an angle like that. Not a break, but the guy that took the x-ray, Roger had to take the x-ray after Roger left, and he had to go somewhere, and he put the x-ray up and said, well, we don't see much here. You can see this little thing. He said, but what happened to your arm? This must have hurt like hell. I said, what? And he says, that's a break. Well, it wasn't a break, it was a cut, but he called it a break because he didn't know what else it could be. And he said, no, that had to hurt like hell. You must have been in terrible pain. And I said, I'm sorry, but I really don't know what you're talking about because I've never broken a bone in my life. And he got mad at me. And so because he thought I was lying to him and I wasn't telling him the truth. So I left, and I had this sports car that had a T-top on it, and I could see through it. And when I got in the parking lot and the light went out. I'm driving down the street, all the lights are going out. I get on the freeway, and banks of lights are going out all the way home. So something was going on there that night.
Are you aware if you were ever followed while driving by a UFO?
No, but I bet I have. You know, I wasn't looking for it. Maybe there was one near me, and that's what was causing the lights to go out. I'm not sure. But maybe they knew I was looking at something. They just,
Yeah.
it was their way of letting me know that we know what you found out, and yeah, you know.
Can you tell me if you've like, are you psychic? Do you have these sort of abilities? You know things before they happen?
Sometimes, yeah. Well, it usually happens in a dream. I'll dream something and it will happen exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing that I have is that I unknowingly went into an old house that had been converted into a store up here in Carpinteria. I think it was during the Avocado Festival. And we were with friends, and I went in there, and immediately everything started to tilt. It just felt like the whole place was leaning over, and I felt this oppression. I felt kind of smothered, and then I heard this woman's voice, and it still gets to my emotions to this day because she was young, she was lost, and she knew I could sense her. And she said, all these people around me all the time, and they don't even know I'm here, and I don't know what's going on, and can you help me? Well, obviously, I think she was a spirit that was trapped, that she died there many, many years ago and was still there. And it was so sad. It was so oppressive, and I couldn't do anything. And I felt terrible. And my people I was with were looking at me funny because they knew something was going on. I just had to get out of there. And then I since then realized that if I go into a building where that's there, I sense it and they sense me. So that's a hard one.
So she was dead, but she didn't know it.
I think, yeah, that's definitely the case. It was very sad.
You've shared a story regarding I think your dead girlfriend.
Yeah, Judy. Yeah, sure. Yeah, and she was 24 years old. I was a couple years older than her. And actually I was 28, so I was 4 years older than her. And she I mean, there was nothing wrong with her. She's a young, beautiful girl, and she spent the night at her friend's house. And to make a long story short, because I know the kids will be back soon, uh, I had to go to a premiere of a movie called Battle Beyond the Stars. It was a Roger Corman movie. I did a lot of alien makeups for, and it was early morning. It was probably around 6, and I had this profound dream. And I was floating in the clouds, and there's all this colored light moving through it, and I could hear this ambient music. It couldn't have been more cliche if this dream could be. And I went, what the hell? And I'm floating, and out comes Judy. She's topless, wearing a pair of underwear. She comes floating over to me. She grabs me. She hugs me. She tells me how much she loves me. She told me that she had to go, that she was fine, and that I was right, because we used to have conversations about life after death. She never believed in that stuff, or UFOs or aliens or any of that stuff. And she said, I had to tell you that you were right. And close that door while I still can. They're back. And she told me I was right. And she even said, and those aliens, you were right about them too. I'll never forget it. And then she left me, disappeared back into the fog, and I woke up like, what was that supposed to be about? And I don't know. I got to go. It was time. I had to get down to Santa Monica to go to the theater and see the movie. And it wasn't until later I got home. Found these messages on the phone that she had died during the night. I guess she had a brain aneurysm, and they tried to resuscitate her. When they found her, I found out later on that she was topless, just in her underwear on the floor, and they tried to, but they couldn't. And I mean, so I had no way of knowing that she was found that way. So that had to be real. It absolutely had to be real. And I mean, that's just, people will say, well, this, that's what the skeptics will say. But I know in my heart, absolutely, if I know anything, that was absolutely real. She actually made the effort to come see me before she left.
It's really
And that
beautiful.
it happened to my mom too, and lots of people in my family. It runs in the family.
Yeah, so you do have a gift regarding that, so
I guess so.
makes sense. Yeah,
I guess so.
I believe you were harassed, perhaps by the military, Men in Black.
Yeah, I had a lot of that. Phone tapped, threats from CIA, NSA. Um, I actually had in MUFON meetings in the dark, a CIA agent walk up to me more once, very charismatic older gentleman, and showed me his in the dark. He showed me, his credentials, and but I couldn't make them out that well, though they were showing slides, and it lit up pretty well, and I could see, he did have an ID as a CIA agent. And I remember Whitley saying that he knew who that guy was because there was a picture of him with a bunch of MUFON people. I said, that's the guy. And he said, yeah, that's so-and-so. I'll have to ask him about that again because it's been a long time. But, they hid in the bushes at night. Friends that didn't know anything about my experiences would come over to visit me, and there'd be somebody in the bushes wearing a white shirt and tie with an ID badge, and they'd run out of the bushes and jump into a black car and drive off. I've had people sitting outside the house waiting for people who were working for me at the time to get their paychecks. And while she was sitting there, she looked up and saw a dark disc hovering over the house. And to that time, she thought that her boyfriend and myself were both crazy until she saw that. And she came running in the house. My wife was harassed. I had black helicopters. I had also marked helicopters that were rented because I got their N numbers. And they wouldn't tell us who rented them. And I got lots of pictures of them. And I had my mail held. I had my mail sent back with checks in them for people buying my bus. Even Chris Carter of X-Files, who created X-Files, had bought my bus. But some people, their checks came back and then no such address. And it happened a number of times. And I found out about it. And all our mail was being held back at the office. And my wife went to check on it and kind of got an argument with the postmaster there and said, I can't help you, lady. And she got followed home by a helicopter that was just hovering above the trees. Whole neighborhood thought that we were selling drugs and the police were coming for us. I mean, it was terrible. That was all during the 90s. And she finally lost it and said, you get out of this or I'm leaving you. And that was about 1999. The last show I did was Jeff Rent's, and that was it. And, except I had a black Sikorsky hover over the house after that show just to let me know that they had heard the show, and I heeded the warning, and just to give me one more good example of what they could do. And Jilly saw it. She came out. It was a big Sikorsky, and it was really low over our house, and it was hovering right there. And the guy was looking right at me, and I waved at him, and he waved back, and it was so obvious what was going on. So yeah, I had a lot of that. I did. And I'm not so sure it's not starting up again. So
when I had my phone tapped for a year, I'd hear these weird 1980s beeps as if the phone was being transferred somewhere else.
Yeah.
So this would happen with only two people, really. My contactee, abductee fiance at the time, and another experiencer who lived close by.
Oh, they want you to know they're listening.
Oh yeah, they do.
Sure they do. It's to intimidate you.
And as soon as the beeps would stop, I'd hear like the phone being picked up, And anyhow,
Oh, sometimes they talked up and
really,
said things you're not supposed to be talking about this, and you hear click.
uh,
And it would scare you. I mean, it's like, oh my God, they're really, this isn't what do you think X Files is based on? Chris knew. And this stuff was happening.
could you share the event? Because you talked about the being in the kitchen. So I call the butcher block being. So could you go
Yeah.
into that one?
Yeah. There's not much to it, really. I mean, I woke up, it was about 3 a.m. Right. And I was thirsty. And I didn't feel terribly drugged or anything, but I was, I'd just woken up after being asleep, and I walked out there to get some water from the refrigerator. It was cold inside, in a pitcher, and we used this filtration system, and there was a butcher block. I mean, one that's quite heavy to move, and it was sitting in front of the refrigerator, so I couldn't get the door open. And I looked down at it and thought, why did they do this? Meaning my late wife and her daughter, and then the legs moved, and that's when I got this chill, and I said, wait a minute. And then in that second, I guess my mind figured out the butcher block wasn't working, so it allowed me to see what was really there. A lot of people see deer and things, and we know what it is, but I don't think it's them projecting it. I think it's your mind looking at something I can't explain. So it allows you to see the next best possibility. Because it was a nightlight on in the kitchen that was kind of the color of Whitley's book cover, Alien. It was kind of fleshy golden, and so did the legs on the butcher block looked that way. And it was amazing when you see them consciously how small they really are. At least this was a small one, and it just gave me that look like and right through the refrigerator, and I ran into the living room. It was very dark in the living room. I was hoping to catch it, but it wasn't in there. And I mean, I wouldn't physically catch it. I just wanted to get a better look at it, and I wanted to say, hey, don't run from me. Let's talk to each other. But no, it was gone so quickly.
Mine
I
was
never
the
forgot it. Yeah, go ahead.
mine was the 3 foot tall boxing glove
Mm-hmm.
at the foot of the bed doing this.
Oh,
So, so that's how I saw it.
wow.
Now, in one of your movies, I think it's The Visit, there's a portal and Gray's coming in through the portal into your bedroom. Did
Yeah.
that happen to you?
No, because that film was much more science fiction, but based on things I recalled. But um, um, Tony Hooper, the son of Toby Hooper, and Toby, you'll see Toby's name in the credits too. I was friends with Toby. I worked on his movies, and I worked on one of his films called Spontaneous Combustion. But of course, he's the director of Poltergeist and lots of other great films. At least I thought they were great. And so I spent a lot of time around Toby and his son Tony, and this stuff was going on, and this was, early '90s, and he said, "Why don't we do a short film? Because we had Adobe Premiere and we had Lightwave, and it was all very early on, but we had it, and he had a good sense of how to use it, and we had fairly decent cameras, not really by today's standards." So I wrote up a script based on a lot of stuff that had happened to me, but not all of it. And so there's a little bit of fiction added in there too. And his idea was to have that vortex come in the wall like that, which was really cool. I mean, you got to figure that was what, 1993 or 4, right in there, and it was very far ahead of its time for a film that was done on an amateur level. We weren't amateurs, either one of us, but using amateur equipment and the early Lightwave and early Adobe Premiere. I thought it was really well done. The thing that suffers is the sound, because we didn't have good mics. We had good cameras, we didn't have good mics. But and then of course the puppetry in it those were all full-size puppets I had made to use in the TV show Sightings, who I worked for. And so we had the little grays and we had the big tall one, and we intermixed that with the CG, and a lot of tricks to get the hands to move and do the things you saw. But that film was really done for fun, and of course we couldn't do anything with it because we used music that was copyrighted, and we had Art Bell in the background, and but we didn't care. We just wanted to have fun and make a film about this stuff. And then it never got seen until recently. It had been lost and buried and turned up, and so I had it cleaned up and put it online. It
I
did get
enjoyed
that.
it.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. Not that many people watched it, and I don't know why. Because plenty of people watched, but something is there. You know, it got a lot of views when it first went on YouTube. Before YouTube took it down, it got over 1.5 million views. Um, that was on another account, but evidently there were some copyright problems, and so they pulled it, and I lost all those views. But I put it up again recently. I recut it. I took care of some of the problems, but they still won't let me monetize it because there's some piece of music they say is not public domain, but it was, and it is. But you can't argue with them because you're arguing with bots and they don't listen to you. So, but that's okay. I'm glad people are getting to see it. It's up to almost 100,000 views now, which is
Hmm.
not what it had, but that's still enough. And more people are watching it all the time. I think it's a good little film because it's honest accounting of the things I remember. And Mr. Lee, he was actually a very small little Asian man. I mean, he couldn't have been taller than 4.5 feet, and he wore like a straw hat. And we couldn't find anybody to play that role, so we got Peter Fox from the Waltons. He was a friend of mine, and he said, "I'll do the role." And I figured, well, okay, you know, but it wasn't what I remember. I remember being in the thicket of our backyard, and it was very green underneath it. And he was in there, and he looked green. He almost looked like Yoda, the wrinkles in his face and stuff. But that really happened because when I started talking to Mom about it, I said, "Do you remember Mr. Lee?" She says, "Who's Mr. Lee?" I said, "He was our Chinese gardener." She said, "We never had a Chinese gardener." So,
Oh my God,
yeah,
that's creepy. Wow. Did
yeah.
you
But he was really nice. We used to talk about astronomy and nature and all kinds of things. And he'd work on the yard. And I thought my mom knew that.
what? That doesn't make sense. Well, was he human?
I don't think he was, no.
Yeah. Could you share with us some interesting stories of your time working on Fright Night and Ghostbusters?
Well, I didn't think Ghostbusters would ever amount to anything. I mean, I was happy to get the work, but I wasn't that excited about it. I was excited about 2010, which was being worked on in the same building. And I said, "Can I go over there and work on on the Discovery and do the Star Child and all that stuff?" And um, they wouldn't let me because I was on a movie that I thought would never amount to anything. And of course, we know now it's a franchise, and it did very well. People love that thing. They pay me money to autograph things from it. So, but it was fun. I worked on it. I got to play some of the creatures, and I made some of the creatures, and it was good. Fright Night was something I was more interested in because I like vampire stories, and so does Whitley, obviously. But there were problems with that because of the union, and so I had kind of a bad experience and a good experience both. But at least I got to spend some quality time with Roddy there for a while. We worked on 6 pictures together, and so I got to know Roddy pretty well, and he was a wonderful human being. I did Evil Ed's makeup. I did a lot of the stages of Chris Sarandon. I didn't do the last one, which I wanted to do, but I got bullied out of it by another one of the uh, other artists on it and wanted that, and just kind of bullied his way out of it. But I did a lot of the work in that. So the whole thing with the pencil in the hand, that was mine, going through. In fact, that wasn't really his hand. It was his hand, but there was prosthetics on it so that we could actually stab into him and have it come out the other side. It was a good trick. And then, of course, the cross on Evil Ed's head, that was my gag. And we had a tube running up there to blow smoke. And it removed another prosthetic that was over the cross, and it pulled off with the cross. And so, you know, it was fun. I enjoyed that, you know.
Um, when I was a kid, not sure when, but I just came back from trick-or-treating. And so they had, this TV channel had a whole bunch of like movies like from all scheduled for the entire night. And so me and my brother would watch these horror movies on TV, and that was the first time I ever saw Fright Night.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, I fell in love with
Welcome to
that.
Fright
And
Night.
sorry,
Welcome to Fright Night. That Chris Sarandon he's still with us. Yeah, really nice man. Yeah, great guy. I've worked on some really cool people. Christopher Walken was another one. So
did you ever meet
different.
Vincent Price?
No, I never did. No,
Oh,
no.
so let's talk about your channel, your YouTube channel,
Okay.
Breaking the Silence. So what's it about?
It's about everything we've been talking about. But the thing is, that Mary noticed, it was her idea to do this. Is that there wasn't a channel that she was aware of that was like a support group that allowed people who had these experiences to tell their stories, either anonymously or with their actual identity, and record it in a cinematic fashion, not just live stream, but to actually put them on camera and let them tell their story to the camera without an interviewer, and then visualize with my CGI effects talents that I have, what they experienced, so that could be shared with the audience, which is proven to be quite successful. But I don't really care about success. I don't care about making money from this stuff. I do know that someone's choking our channel right now, and it's not going to stop me, because we were getting major views, and then all of a sudden it just sort of stopped. So that YouTube's not promoting us like they were. All of a sudden they're stopping. So I know things go on behind the scenes, and it's not going to stop me.
Good.
Tomorrow I'm going to be on Dream Talk Radio, which is radio coast to coast, 7 million listeners. So hopefully that'll bring more awareness to our channel that way. Because obviously if we get more views, we get more revenue, and the revenue does help, because at this point we're spending our own money to support it, and we're not using home cameras and home sound equipment. We're using professional cinema equipment, and I paid a lot of money for that stuff, and it cost us. We figured out it cost us almost $3,500 an episode, and we're up to 23 now. We do get some revenue from YouTube, but just as it started getting to a point where it was really helping, all of a sudden it went down real fast. No one has an explanation for it. So, but I'm not going to let that faze me. I'm retired, sort of. I have my Social Security and my Screen Actors pension that I get still from Hollywood, and I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah. So I find your site really fascinating. It's well done. So
Oh, thank you,
yeah,
Jan.
kudos to you. It's amazing. And so your book also, it's available on Amazon.
Yeah, it's still there. Yeah, it keeps. I keep getting these notices that you need to fix something on it, but it doesn't affect it. And it's the editing. I've had it edited 3 times, and evidently there's some editorial problems or something. But I think where that's really come from is the transcript, and the transcripts of that surgery. And it's a transcript that was written by a transcriber, and it's verbatim. So, some of the spelling is spelt to emulate, and then I think, and, I'm under hypnosis, and I'm sort of slurring my words and inaudible and that kind of thing. My thought was to release that just the way it was done, but it's probably going to be republished, and they're going to go through and groom that, make it more palatable for the reader that doesn't get what's going on with that. So, but yeah, the book's done really well. I get a terrible little bit of money from it. Amazon takes all the money. That YouTube takes a huge percentage, as you know, but Amazon really does. And so, I don't know how many hardbacks or softbacks I've sold. I don't really have any way of knowing. I can't make out what they send me, what sold, and it's not much. But I don't care. I don't care because people really enjoyed the book. I get a lot of email from people thanking me because you know what they say. They say, I don't feel crazy anymore. I don't feel alone anymore. Thank you. And I get to hear their stories, and sometimes they will allow us to read them in Mary's podcast, Secret Stories. And so that's what it was for, not to get rich and famous, And as you know, in this realm, um, there's a lot of ego going on, and people want to be the center of attention with the subject matter, and they're missing the point. This is incredible what's happening to us. We're interacting with something that's out of this world, out of our world. At least I think it is. And it's one of the most amazing things to happen in human history, and people want to cash in on it. I mean, I understand you need to make money, pay bills. It helps when you're doing this, but it's more than that. They want Ferraris and swimming pools and girls and be famous on television, and I see it.
Yeah. It's
So.
I've spoken to people that were in contact of TV shows. Let's say, I won't say which ones, but the top producer said it's not about informing the public, it's about entertainment. So
That's correct. That's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
They just it's all about the money.
It is.
There was a sizzle reel that was created for a program. And it had some of the whistleblowers involved in it very early on. This was like 3 years ago or so. Whitley, myself was interviewed. Vaughn was interviewed, and we were brought to this house up in the hills in Tujunga Canyon, and we were in a garage, and it was lit very well, very professional equipment and everything. These people had done a number of big shows, but they had a concept show they wanted to do about this, and they went into it thinking about it in one way. And they after the producer, who was a very nice man, he was very skeptical, but after he experienced these people and saw their interviews, he knew there was truth to this. It completely changed him. So he cut the sizzle reel in such a way that he sat at a mic like we are right now and talked about these people. And he talked about how interviewing these people and hearing their stories affected his perspective on life and how he looked at this subject. And he said, this is real. This is important. And we need to pay close attention to this. It was beautiful. I still have the sizzle reel, and it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen done in this subject. And so they went to shop it to Arts and Entertainment and History Channel and all the other channels. And not one of them would take it if they didn't put in reenactments with actors, make it scary, make it sensational, so the bean counters could count their beans. So he said no. He turned them all down and put it on a shelf rather than let them destroy it. So he's one of my heroes. Could he have used the money? Maybe. Did it matter? Not to him. He truly believed this was an important thing to share with people. And I'm happy to say that Arts and Entertainment, Netflix was open enough to make that a reality, because that series they did recently, it was very, very good. It was very faithful and respectful. And of course, Philip Mantle worked on the Pascagoula case, produced on that. His book is fantastic. We had him on the show. I've known him for years, and that was very faithful. And so I think it showed to them, since it was the highest rated show they had, that if you tell the truth, you don't over sensationalize it. You don't try to make it more than it is, the way they did with Fire in the Sky.
Oh, yeah.
It will do well on its own. Just be honest, do the right thing. And they did it. But they're one of the few. And Spielberg also, and with his Encounters, 4 episodes, beautiful. And I think that's starting to show these guys that, well, maybe we still can make money if we just tell the truth. Just let these people tell the truth. We don't need skeptics. We don't need to, make their abduction bigger than it was and show aliens with teeth and drool, and they just leave it alone. So my fingers are crossed. And that's what we've been doing. So
Yeah, true. Let's call it a night, Steve. To
Yeah.
finish off the interview, like, do you have like perhaps another story to share or a closing statement to share with everyone?
This thing just came into my head right now. Watch the skies. That's so ridiculously cliche. I mean, seriously, they can't do something better than that. But that's what came into my head. Watch the skies, and really, because if you have doubts about this stuff and you spend any time at all, and it's really nice for your soul too. It's a good meditation. Go in the backyard. When's the last time you did that and looked at the stars and really thought about where you are? You know, you're this being floating in this ball, it's surrounded by stars, and you were born from them. Everything in your body material is born from stars, stellar material. And that should be a good starting point to open up the minds of people on Earth, and maybe we'll start fighting with each other and go out there and explore.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. So, Steve, thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's been fun.
Oh, thank you for having me, Jan. I really appreciate it, and I've enjoyed your show. I have been watching it, and so when I got the message from you about being on the show, I was really honored to do this. So,
yeah, thank you. And I enjoyed yours with.
You're going to be on my show tomorrow night.
Tomorrow.
So, and then you can tell your whole story, and I know. People have written to me from our group and said, "Oh, you're having him on. He's so wonderful," and so they're very excited about that. So you
looking
get
forward. Yeah, it's gonna be
yeah, me too. Okay.
So to those watching, hope you enjoyed today's interview. I sure did. I'm your host, Mr. Great. More interviews coming up, and I'll see you guys next time. So,
See you guys.
everyone. Hello, everyone. This is Mr. Great, and thanks for watching today's episode. If you are an abductee, contactee, or experiencer, and you believe that your story could help others, please feel free to contact me through my YouTube channel email. When it comes to experiencers, the ET phenomena, and the future, remember, truth will out.